Hey everyone, it's Brenda Stolyar, Mashable's tech reporter, and today we are going to be checking out the LG Wing. So this is a dual screen phone with a top display that swivels. Oh, wait, I think I could do it. I'm particularly excited to check this one out because LG is a company that is known for some pretty iconic phones, including the LG Envy and the TV phone and the LG Chocolate, which I'm sure we all remember. It's safe to say the brand has been playing it fairly safe as of late. We've seen the LG V Thin Q and the LG V Thin Q and more of the LG V Thin Q and just a bunch of different iterations. And don't get me wrong, it's a capable phone. But in a world of, the Galaxy Z Fold 2 or the Microsoft Surface Duo or the Galaxy Z Flip or the Motorola Razr, they just haven't really been able to stand out. And as part of something called the Explorer project, their first phone is the LG Wing 5G, and we're gonna check it out. This is the LG Wing 5G. So before we get into all of the different features, let's just talk about design and specs. So from first glance, it looks like a standard smartphone. You have your 6.8-inch main display here, edge to edge as well, which is nice because it's reduced bezels. There's the power button and volume rocker here. On the bottom is a Type-C port and speaker grills. And then on the back you have your triple camera module. And there is no headphone jack, unfortunately, here. So LG did decide to get rid of that one. And then when you swivel it open, let's just do that again because that's really freaking fun, I must say. The top main display swivels 90 degrees clockwise, and underneath is a 3.9-inch display that you can use simultaneously with the top display. So if you're wondering why a form factor like this is even necessary, LG is really just pushing this idea of multitasking. I know specifically for me on my iPhone, I will swap between apps back and forth to answer messages and then just scroll through Twitter or watch a YouTube video. I'm going back and forth constantly. But with this, you can actually just open up Twitter, scroll through, and also watch a YouTube video if you so choose. So it really is just pushing this idea of being able to do more at the same time. So on the back you have 3 cameras. You have the 64 megapixel main sensor wide angle lens, a 13 megapixel ultra wide angle lens, and then a 12 megapixel ultra wide angle lens. So LG really didn't skimp on the cameras. There are also a ton of cool camera features that we will get into in a little, and it is capable of shooting up to 4K video. So one thing I'm really excited about is the pop-up selfie camera. So this is a 32 megapixel sensor, so you can use it for dual recording, which I will also show you in a bit. And then it also just works as a standard selfie camera. So I'm actually really excited about this pop-up selfie camera, just specifically as a design choice, because we don't see it much. We typically see a hole punch selfie camera or a notch. So this is just fun. I think literally there's no other reason other than I think it's really fun. Also, I didn't realize, but I had accidentally thrown my phone onto my bed at one point and had this open, and it does shut off when it senses that you've either dropped the phone or you, like me, have thrown it elsewhere. As far as processor goes, there's a Qualcomm Snapdragon 765G. So obviously, if you couldn't tell by the name, there is 5G connectivity with this phone. Depending on the carrier, it does come in two variations. So there will be a sub-6 model for the slower 5G speeds, and then there will also be a version with both 5G and millimeter wave, depending on, again, both your carrier and whether or not your area has that 5G connectivity. In addition to that multitasking that I was talking about, I personally really like this form factor, specifically because with phones like the Surface Duo, which is another dual screen phone, or even the different category of foldables, like the Z Fold 2 from Samsung, having both displays to the left and the right of you, for me, kind of doesn't feel as natural when I'm watching YouTube on one screen and, messaging on the other, because I feel like I'm looking back and forth, whereas with this, in terms of like eye level, it just feels a lot more natural. Based on first impressions, just, having that top display with, even though it's a small 3.9 inch bottom display, it still feels a lot more comfortable. So it's also really nice for something like Google Maps, because, I don't know about you, but there's plenty of times where I'm trying to find my way somewhere and I'm also texting a friend at the same time. So that's really nice, because that way you can focus on two things simultaneously, like where you're going and who you're meeting up with. And then to really utilize that dual screen mode, you can also launch two apps at the same time, depending on which ones that you often use together. I do also want to mention battery, because the swivel certainly impacts it. Obviously, you're constantly opening and closing the phone, which triggers the displays. And I did notice the battery, I went from like 64% to 63% with just a few swivels. It does have a 4,000 milliamp hour battery, which LG claims can last all day. Of course, that is dependent on how much you use the phone, and how much you swivel it, if you are me. As far as storage goes, there is one configuration only, so it's 8 gigabytes of memory and then 256 gigabytes of internal storage, but there is a micro SD card slot that can be expanded up to 2 terabytes if you need that much. And what's great about this is you can still use this display as just a regular phone, and it's big enough. It's at 6.8 inches. I think for me personally, the screen size is super ideal, and it navigates the way you would any standard smartphone. So to be able to have that option is nice, because it means that you don't have to constantly open the phone like you would with the Surface Duo, which doesn't have anything on the outside as far as cover displays go. So you're not forced into swivel mode, which is what they call it. This is basic mode, because it's V basic, and this is swivel mode. So yeah, you don't have to constantly be in swivel mode in order to use the phone. Of course, if you are finding yourself wanting to use 2 apps at the same time, then you can open it. Otherwise, if you're just quickly answering an email or making a phone call, or just scrolling through social media, then you'll really be just fine with this one display. So it's important to note that there obviously aren't any apps utilized for this form factor yet, because it is so new. So something like Netflix at the moment is not gonna work, but you can obviously still take advantage of the 6.8 inch screen, and just watch your shows using the main display. So let's get into camera mode, because I think the features on here are pretty cool. So the one thing that LG is really pushing with this is gimbal mode. So essentially the second screen turns into your control panel. You can use the joystick to move the camera along. You have your different modes, so follow mode, first person view mode, and pan. And then you can also obviously calibrate and then lock it. Even with one hand, it's pretty comfortable, I'd say, to reach all of the different controls and also move the joystick along. What I'm actually super excited to use is dual recording. Basically, you're able to see yourself using the front-facing camera, and then you can use the rear camera to capture shots of everything in front of you. And that's really cool because that way you don't have to switch back and forth between camera modes. You can just easily follow along to both. And then there's also picture-in-picture as well if you don't want it in split view side by side, so that makes it easier to just keep yourself in the corner and then see everything else. And then again, if what you're mainly wanting to look at is yourself, greetings, and then you want what's around you in the smaller square in picture mode, then you also have that capability. So other things that you can do, there's slow-mo mode, there's time-lapse, but I think gimbal mode and dual recording right here are the coolest ones of the two, I'd say. And then when you're in this dual recording mode, you have the option to either save each video separately, so that you probably have more room to edit, depending on what type of video that it is you're filming. You can cut back and forth between shots, or you can, if you do want this specific shot, which I will include an example of, you can also save it together as one, which is also really nice. That way you don't have to do that much in editing to piece these things together. Okay, so this is an example of dual recording mode. So right now you are seeing my messy room, but you're also seeing both the rear camera and the front facing camera working simultaneously to capture both shots. And so I saved this as like one file. Again, I said this before, but you also have the option to save it separately. So that way you are capturing content at the same time, but it gives you more room to edit it depending on exactly what it is your video is focusing on. Okay, so going back to the swivel and durability of the phone, because when I posted this on my Instagram and my Twitter, I got a lot of people commenting. I didn't really get that many people, I'm such a liar. I got a few people commenting that this thing looks really fragile, and I agree. I mean, it doesn't feel fragile, it just looks fragile. LG did test the swivels out for durability, and according to the company, it's proven to be reliable even after 200,000 swivels. And that's if you're opening it 100 times a day for 5 years. One thing that does sort of concern me is the second display, because if you break this second display, I imagine you would have to take apart, see, I almost dropped it. I imagine you'd have to, I don't know. I'm very curious to know what it would be like to fix this thing, because I mean, maybe you wouldn't have to take apart the whole phone actually, now that I think about it. Regardless, it just looks like a very complex thing as far as parts go to fix. It also, this color, it's very nice reflective, but it certainly gets fingerprinty for sure. So another thing that's worth mentioning as far as durability goes is that there is a protective plastic layer on the back of this main screen to protect the second display when you're constantly swiveling it open and closed. Let's get into gaming. Okay, so you basically have your settings at the bottom and then our controls up at top. So excited, let's play this. That is your first look at the LG Wing 5G. So LG has yet to confirm pricing and availability, but they have said that it'll be around $1,000. The pricing is dependent on the carrier. And speaking of carriers, it'll first be available with Verizon, and T-Mobile and AT&T will follow. As far as my first impressions go, it's a really exciting form factor. especially with what is currently out there, such as the Surface Duo, and then foldables are obviously a separate category in and of itself, but I think for me, the biggest takeaway is just that it's super compact for one-handed use. You literally get 2 displays that you can still hold with one hand. Whether it's a dual screen or a foldable, the things that are out right now require constantly juggling it. When you want a bigger screen, you have to open it with 2 hands. So to be able to just literally do this. But again, this is the first phone to come out of LG's Explorer project. So if anything, it just makes me super excited to see what they're gonna come out with next. So I hope you enjoyed taking a look at LG's latest dual screen swivel phone. And as usual, be sure to head over to Mashable to check out the latest tech news, reviews, and more.